So today I am joined by Dale McClelland, who has agreed to share her insights with us.
Yeah, as you said, I'm a canine behaviourist.
What sort of differences do you see in how the different breeds communicate, thinking about breeds of...
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think when you like a breed and you have a preference for a particular breed, you get, hopefully, you get to be really good at reading them. Out for myself, but also not to make that big assumption that because a dog is hairy, because a dog has got more wrinkles, that they can't communicate, because they could still communicate, or we would have had a lot more incidents of fighting or upset between dogs. So it can't all be, it can't to dogs all be the signs that we are familiar with looking at, or there would be far more issues between them.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that actually, how that feeds into communication between very different breeds in terms of appearance when they're interacting. Is it just a difference that we see or don't see, or whether it's a difference that they also maybe see or don't see?
I think it also depends on their exposure to lots of different breeds. I think that for the dogs who haven't had that much general exposure to meeting a lot of different types of dogs, when they do come across one that's different, then it probably does take them a bit of time to learn. It's a bit like dialect, isn't it? I always think it's a bit like my Scottish accent. That maybe if you maybe once you zone in to an accent, you find it much easier to understand. But if you've never actually had that, it'll take you a bit of time to sort of zone into it and get an ear for it. And I often think, is that what it's like for dogs when they meet a dog that they've never seen that type before? Now, one of my Rottweilers, he absolutely really could not abide huskies.
Ah, that's interesting.
And when I watched him, I'm pretty sure it was their direct gaze.
Yes.
Because, huskies in general do have that very either piercing blue eyes, or they do have that very direct gaze. And then, so that was the only breed of dog that he ever became uncomfortable around. He was really sociable. And he did mix with some. But what I could see in the beginning was he was unsure of them.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I would say typically in my experience, if a greyhound is that's generally okay with other dogs, is going to take offence at any particular dog, it'll be the one that stares at them.
Yes.
I find greyhounds are really quite unassuming, and they defer very easily when it comes to eye contact. If you kind of widen your eyes at one, they'll go, oh, sorry, shouldn't have done that. And if you get something like a collie or a husky that is really high on eye contact and eye stalking, and also some of the little terriers that are very feisty and very keen for eye contact, that can cause problems in a way that they might have been okay with a breed that was less into eye contact, because they are quite unassuming in that respect. And it's interesting to hear of that in another breed as well. It's not just my imagination.
No, and I think that I see it a lot with the dogs that come here. When we see dogs who are interacting, it should be that nice subtle interaction of, like, I see you, I don't mean anything, whereas we have consciously bred certain dogs to do that very direct eye contact with something they're interested in. Now, naturally, lots of dogs like huskies and collies, will learn and can learn not, to actually communicate a little less directly. But I suppose it depends on the dog's the dog on the receiving end, their understanding of, well, that shape of dog or that direct eye contact does not necessarily mean a worry to me.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess that there's that experience as well that runs through it. I my Rotties were well used to lots of different breeds, and so they were quite comfortable with meeting other dogs. Interestingly, what I used to find is that some dogs were uncomfortable meeting them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like they had to give much bigger signs that everything is okay. So they had to do lots more wiggly body, lots of turning away. And it was almost like they had to exaggerate that everything was okay. And it's not at a conscious level, but obviously they would be picking up whether the other dog was responding
Yes. Yeah.
or not. And that's all to do with experience, isn't it?
Yes.
And I do wonder if it's a bit like at times if we meet someone that's wearing sunglasses.
Yes.
And that it can sometimes be a little difficult to gauge whether the person's, when you're having a conversation, if they're wearing sunglasses. We can't really get back from them whether, we're missing a little bit of information.
Yeah. And greyhounds also can take exception to people wearing sunglasses. And I've always put that down to, it's like big starey eyes. But it might also be an element of they can't see the movement of the eyes, and are the eyes starey, are the eyes soft, what the eyes, I mean, in humans, obviously this is not dogs. But I've certainly found that dogs of mine in the past have been wary if someone's wearing sunglasses, which has to be to do with the nature or the ability to make eye contact. It's not just about things that affect the shape of the body.
Yeah, and I think as well with it, it's almost like there's a bit of information that's missing potentially, isn't there?
It's not quite
and I suppose as well when people have got, wearing a hood or a hat, or they've got facial hair, or there's something hiding parts of them. We just simply don't know how the dog perceives that. But I suppose the thing is that the greater the experience of the dog, the less worried they become by those, what I suppose they would see as a bit of a kind of a deficit, and that way it's interesting for me to kind of think about when people used to say to me about Rottweilers being really, really difficult to read facially, and I would say, well, actually, I think they're really, really easy to read. But when you do look at, they have got the brown dots above their eyes, but their eyes are generally dark. They're not huge eyes, that quite not deep set. But you think, well, is there something about markings on a dog's face as well that actually, I know for humans that studies have said that actually we read dogs with markings on their face. We can read that much, much easier than a dog without any markings. But of course, we don't know whether dogs, when they see a dog that has got markings on their face, whether they interpret that differently. I mean, we have no idea.
That's interesting. Do you think colour overall makes a difference? Because one thing I notice with greyhounds is that, mine at least, if I'm going to have a dog that's reactive, they're more likely to react. Sorry, that was Gandalf nudging. They're more likely to react to something that's pale in colour. And I wonder if that's a UK greyhound thing, because in the UK, the majority are dark colours, not all. But if you say, look at the States, they don't have the same bloodlines. And so there are more paler colours. But pale and fluffy, curly, long curly hair is most likely to cause a reaction. They're less likely to react to a darker coloured dog. Yet, if you read the literature, they often suggest that darker colours cause more problems, and they assume it's because the dogs can't make out the features in a darker coloured dog.
Yeah,
But I actually see the opposite with greyhounds.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's back to that, is that light colour, fluffy hair, is that so far removed from what the majority of greyhounds, racing greyhounds, I'm assuming anyway, that their experience would have been seeing very specific shapes and types and colours of dogs. And maybe for greyhounds in that case, it's because that is so far removed from what they have been used to. So I think the majority of the nervous dogs that I work with, their owners will say it's usually a large dark dog, dark coloured dog, that they would be most worried about.
So a lot of greyhounds would fall into the category of dogs that alarm others, which might be what then prompts them to have a less than friendly reception.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, and it's interesting, that we don't know, because part of it is, again, if you have a dog who had a friend who was a large black or dark brown dog, then when they see that outline and they see that shape, then that is a more positive association. I think that when we're talking about degrees, really, so dogs might be uncomfortable with all sorts of different kind of dogs, but the owners don't notice until it's one that they're really uncomfortable with. So they might actually be, it might not be, oh, he's great with other dogs, he just doesn't like the large dark coloured ones. It might be that is just too far, just too much. And I think that, talking about the greyhounds or other breeds, if they've got limited experience of a lot of different breeds, then they are going to struggle a bit when they meet an unusual shape or something that they don't know.
And it's, in a way, it's perhaps surprising that more of them don't struggle more, I wonder. But one thing that's always fascinated me, and I've had this in all my greyhound owning years, is that you might have a dog that will ignore other dogs completely. They don't even bother to notice them. They don't exist to them. But we see a greyhound 100 meters away, and it's like, we got to go and say hello. And I am suddenly going very fast down the path to go and talk to this complete stranger because my dogs want to go and say hello. And they clearly recognize that that is a greyhound. And it can be, they recognize the greyhound, but if it's a lurcher that can be slightly different shape or a little bit hairy, no response. It's very specifically, those are greyhounds. We've got to go and say hello. Any thoughts on why that might happen?
Well, I think it is all to do with sort of like imprinting. So if you've been brought up with a particular, shape, size, variations obviously in colours and things, but if you've been brought up to recognise and have a positive association with a particular breed, I do it, you do it. When I see a Rottie, I go, oh, a Rottie! Oh, it's a Rottie. Or I go, oh, it's an Old English Sheepdog. And so I have a response to that shape, that dog. I might say, oh, there's a dog as well. But if it's a dog that I have had a connection with, then my response is going to be different, and I'm going to want to move towards it, whereas I might see a dog and go, oh, look at that wee West Highland Terrier, that's cute. I've not had one, so therefore I've not lived with one. So therefore I'm not going to have the same response.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we experience it, and I think dogs definitely do. And it's an interesting question because people will say to me, do dogs know, that a greyhound is the same as them, or do they know that a cockapoo is the same as them? So there's a bigger question to that is actually that would mean that our dogs had to know what they were.
Yeah. And I
And
think I'm not even convinced at times that my greyhounds understand that other breeds are dogs.
yeah,
I think to them there are greyhounds and there are other canines. And
yes,
I wonder if some of the confusion is, does it smell slightly like a dog, but it doesn't look right?
yes,
Because it should
yeah,
look like a greyhound and it doesn't. So why does it smell of dog? And
yeah,
you can almost see
absolutely.
the cogs wearing. It's
I
like,
think
what
there
is
must,
that?
yeah, I think, the sight, the sound, the smell, we don't know what dogs are picking up. Movement, I think, is really important. And I think that dogs can recognize when it's a familiar pattern of behavior or movement, that perhaps they recognize from, that even if they were only in their family for, 8 weeks after they were born, that they've imprinted information there.
Yeah.
So I think I mean, I have got dogs here that um they like each other, and some of them are the similar breeds.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is really important is its movement and play style.
Yes. Yeah.
So, for instance, I have got a few greyhounds that have come here over the years, and they always amaze me because I have never, in my limited experience, I've only had a few greyhounds that have come here for daycare and boarding, so I'm spending a long time with them. I have never seen them doing the going up on hind legs and doing that pretend wrestly thing
Yeah.
that I see lots of other breeds doing,
Mm.
but I've never seen the greyhounds or the whippets that came here or the
Mm.
lurchers. I've never seen them doing that. But they seem to be really worried about their legs all of the time and really worried about dogs knocking into them and things. And it's
Interesting.
really quite interesting to watch that. You'll see them sort of moving in a particular way.
Like a
And
spider, that was.
that's what it's like. And it's really funny to watch it to say, oh my goodness, like I've got sort of like maybe a cockapoo that will run up to one of the greyhounds, and he'll go up on his hind legs and he'll sort
Mm.
of pitter patter on their
Mm.
shoulder, and they kind of they stand
Yeah.
there like as though like, oh, what have you
Yeah.
done?
Yeah. That's not acceptable behavior.
No, no, and it's like, how dare you?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
then you'll see the greyhound saying, but we could run.
Mm.
Like, and then they'll do this
Yeah.
diving about and then they'll all go off running together.
Yeah.
But then it's even the way that they change direction, and it's just so different from
Mm.
other breeds. So
Mm.
you see the wee dogs running and change, they're quite fast at changing directions. But the greyhounds, you'll see
Got a
their
circle
tail
round.
swishing round as they're trying to get
Yeah.
round to chase. And it's just so interesting how they're fabulous on that straight,
Mm.
but they're
Not designed for
not so
corners.
good at the
No.
twisting and turning that other breeds are doing. So
Yeah.
then they move differently
Yes.
from a lot
Yeah.
of other breeds. They
Yeah.
definitely do. But
Yeah.
their play is very different.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know, have you seen them going up and doing the
Yeah.
hind? Yeah,
Gandalf
right,
will with Jimmy.
right,
But and Gandalf used to with Daisy when I still had Daisy. She would literally rear up and whack him round the
right,
chest or round the face with her foreleg. And Jimmy will come and like put his arm over Gandalf's shoulder.
right.
And then Gandalf will rear up. But I mean, I've never had a different breed with a greyhound, but I wonder whether, I think that is how a greyhound might well play with another greyhound. But if you've only got one greyhound, whether they're going to play like that with another dog.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think with what you're saying about their legs is quite interesting, because often they can be quite sensitive about having their feet touched, and they get quite confused when things are between their legs. So my worst nightmare is the little dog in the park. Don't worry, he's friendly. And then it's between their legs and they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, oh my God. And they don't know what to do. And when it comes out, that's when they're going to go for it, because it's, what is this? What is it doing under me? Because of course they can't see it. And it's potentially touching their feet. And they can be quite sensitive about that, full stop.
Yeah, so. And it's interesting. I just noticed this real awareness in the greyhounds and the lurchers and the whippets. There's an awareness of those legs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's not like they're protecting them, themselves.
Yeah.
It's just almost like anything that isn't supposed to be around about their legs, becomes a bit of a worry. And it's just interesting to see it, and they will play with other dogs, and I've seen them I mean, obviously, for some dogs they love the chase. Now, my Old English sheepdogs, if something is running, they are running with it, and they'll try and get in front, obviously, to try and cut them off, but movement to them is really important, and that sparks their running.
Yeah.
See, for my Rotties, not so much. Yeah. Something running was kind of vaguely, we would watch it, not really that interested.
They don't have the chase part.
They don't have that chase part. But what they would quite like is when they were playing, there would be a lot of kind of chest, kind of pushing,
barging.
Bits of this kind of type of play. My Old English sheepdog don't play like that at all, and I think for dogs, asking breeds of dogs to play together, they've got to learn almost what is acceptable play.
Yeah.
And so, like, my Rotties would have to learn. Not all dogs really want you to come over and start bashing into them and think it's great fun. But they then had to learn to moderate their play style depending on who they were playing with. But I think if dogs don't have that broad experience of lots of different breeds, they're a bit lost. They can't. We have one play style and you're not doing it. So therefore I don't play with you.
So thank you so much again for sharing your insights, Dale. It's been really fascinating to talk to you today. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely. Any excuse to talk about dogs.
And if people are interested in learning a little bit more about what you do, I'll share the link to the Without Worry Canine Education in the description, not the comment, in the description, so you can check out Dale's courses there if you're interested in doing any courses with Dale in the future.
So a huge thank you to Dale for talking to us today, and I hope that's given you a better understanding of what your greyhound may be thinking when they see other breeds of dogs and how they might make sense of those other breeds out there in the park that look nothing like them whatsoever. That's all for today. We'll be back again soon. Hope to see you then. Bye for now.
Look out for new videos every Monday, and why not subscribe so you don't miss out?